in the course of being on that show, I happened to kill a wolverine, with an axe. It's pretty wild situation. And there's this other popular hunting podcast called Kafaru Cast. And that guy had also shot a wolverine that year with his recurve. He's like, I'm probably the only person ever, to have done that, got a wolverine this year with a recurve. And so all his listeners wrote in, oh, you got to see Alone season 6. Anyway, so he invited me on to talk about that. And it just so happens that Joe listens to that podcast. And he wrote me back the next morning. He was like, hey, I love the podcast. If you're ever in LA, let me know. And I was like, well, I guess I'll be in LA.
Yeah. I'll make
week,
the trip, Joe. Thanks, buddy.
Totally. So
I'll see what my schedule looks like next month.
Right. Made it over there. And he's an awesome guy, very real genuine person. He was generous with his time. Probably we did the interview. That's basically when I met him, was when he turned the mic on. And then after the show, he sat around and shot pool for a couple hours. And
really, that's cool.
Yeah.
I've always wondered, like his dynamic versus, how we do, like you showed up, we're sitting by the pool just chatting for a while.
Right.
Like, I'm like, I don't know like what normal is for, these big shows.
Right. No, that was good. He, when I came in, he's fairly famous. So he has all his Navy SEALs bodyguard guys, but they were all fun to chat with, talking about living in the Arctic and doing all that kind of stuff. So I shot the breeze with them until the show started, and then like I said, that's when I met Joe, and he's a pretty genuine guy, you can tell. So
that's awesome. That's very cool. All right. Well, you mentioned the Arctic. Why don't we start with Siberia? Actually, I want to go back there.
Oh yeah.
Why don't we begin? How did that happen? How do you get from, you were born in America, I assume, right?
Yep. I grew up in Idaho and
what part?
North Idaho, Sandpoint area.
Oh, no way. I'm actually leaving in 2 hours from right now. I'm leaving on a plane to go to Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, no kidding.
I have a house in Coeur d'Alene.
No kidding. I live halfway between Sandpoint and Coeur d'Alene. That's where I grew up. My mom's still on the farm there.
No way.
Yeah.
That's funny. I'm literally going there today.
Well, that's pretty random.
Okay. So I know the area well. Sandpoint's amazing.
Yeah. It's a great place. And grew up there on the farm, and I have a brother who was adopted. We adopted him, though, or my parents did, when he was just 3 days old, so he never knew his biological family. When he grew up, he wanted to find his mom and tell her thanks for giving him a chance, and it was about when I was 20 years old, he found his biological family, and he had a brother that was my age, and that guy was going to go to Russia and help this missionary build an orphanage, and kind of told me about that whole operation. And I, long story short, decided to just get a ticket for a year and head over there and help out. And I'd never prior thought about going to Russia, but when I got there, for one, I felt a real strong sense of purpose. But then I also, so I bought a ticket for a year, and just dove right in. And I got there, helped the guy build the orphanage. He's an awesome dude, but he was born in America, and I wanted to live with Russians, so he sent me to a neighboring village, and I lived with a couple Russian families, just Siberian village life, cutting hay with a sai and stacking it in those little piles as they do, and milking the cow every morning, and all that kind of stuff. But also common in Siberia is all the men that I knew in that village had been to prison, and they'd all been to prison together. So they'd all tell me like, when you got to go up north and meet my buddy up north, that they were in prison with, and so they were real close. They'd found God in prison together and, really consider themselves brothers. So eventually that guy who was a fur trapper in the north came through and invited me to go live with him. And the story just kept rolling from there. So I went up there, spent a season with him fur trapping. He showed me all the ropes and earned his trust. And he just so happened to be an Evenki which is native, in Siberia. They kind of have more of an Asian look or Mongolian look. And after I earned his trust, all his cousins are nomads still and follow reindeer herds and live in teepees in the wilderness. And he basically one day just took me on a snowmobile and dropped me off at his cousin's teepee, and it's like, oh, this is Jordan, he's awesome. This is Andre, he's awesome. And see you later. And I got to live with those native nomads, and I really loved their way of life and just kept going back for years. And
so they just follow the reindeer around?
Yeah.
Are they hunting them, or are they?
No, they kind of yes, they live off of wild reindeer and moose and fishing and all that. Yeah. But they also have these semi-domestic reindeer that it's you can't really tell if they're following the reindeer or the reindeer are following them. They kind of are in this symbiotic relationship and move through the forest, and they kind of manage where they're living and grazing and protect them from the wolves and stuff. And in return, they provide, they ride the reindeer like horses and pull sleighs in the winter, get them meat, fur, all that they need, milk them,
Really?
Yeah. So it's
Reindeer milk, that's a thing?
Yeah. It's like 19% milk fat. So it's like really creamy. You put a little bit in a cup and woo. Good stuff.
It's incredible. I did not know that reindeer milk was a thing.
Yeah.
I have
to try that. Okay. You can find it at your grocery store.
Yeah, we'll see if I kill it at Whole Foods. Okay. All right. So, do they speak English? Did you speak
no,
their
by
language?
that time I had learned Russian. So, and most of them speak Russian. It's though they have a native Evenki language, it's one of those things where the older generation speaks all in Evenki.
Okay.
Our age folks half and half, and the young generation solely Russian. So it's kind of an interesting crossway in their culture right now.
Had you read, this is random, have you read The Tiger? You don't know
I
the book
haven't.
The Tiger? There's a book called The Tiger. I actually heard about it because Ryan Holiday was on Joe Rogan, and he mentioned the tiger. But anyway, it was about a tiger in Siberia. Did you have tigers? I mean, is that a thing?
No, we were, they do
spot?
in Siberia, but that's far east Siberia, kind of, by the Pacific Ocean, and we were dead center of Russia, like central northern Siberia, kind of.
Yeah, that's wild.
So away from the tigers, but it was a wild land, some of the most, the most wild land on earth. Fly over it in a helicopter for hours and see nothing.
Yeah, but, crazy, man. So when did you come back home to the States?
I spent the better part of, I spent a total of 5 years there over the course of 10 years. I'd come back to the States, earn some money, go back, live there. And my last trip was in 2015. Wow. And so that one was with my wife, who was at the time pregnant. And then we came back to America and had to, have since had a few kids. We wanted to go back a few years ago, and then COVID happened, and now Russia's basically
it's a little off limits right now.
A little more complicated at the moment. So
wow. Did you just like, hey, honey, I got you want to go to Russia with me while you're pregnant?
I met her. When I met her, I had already spent years over there, and it was really important that whoever I would marry would share that with me. And so that's quite a filter, if you want to go live in a teepee in Siberia. There's not so many people. But when I met her, she had been living in China for a couple of years, and we kind of connected on that semi-nomadic lifestyle. And she was all about it. She went over there, spent most of a winter in Siberia, and the one winter she lived with me. We're in a teepee in the middle of Siberia, -56 is what I think it got down to. But she did great, and that winter we came back to the States and then went back over, and the next summer that we went, she was pregnant, and that was an adventure also. But
that's great. That's great. Yeah,
good for her.
Are you planning when it opens back up again nicely? Are you planning to take the kids and family and?
I'd love to. It's such a unique angle on life. I'd love to expose my kids to it. Obviously, the people that are there are now like friends and not family, so it's like I do miss them.
Yeah,
want to go see them, and so definitely. I actually talked to a friend not long ago that said you can actually get to Russia via Romania.
You can get it, I'm sure somehow.
It could still be an option, but of course, with a family, I'll have to wait till things settle down. But,
Well, that's an interesting question. I'd love to. Maybe we'll dive in a little bit later. But the idea of like how actually let's do it now. Right. I want to. How do you balance, and how have you balanced risk now that you're a father? Balancing, like, it's one thing to go out into the middle of wherever when you're alone, but now you got kids. Like, how do you still balance risk, and how do you put your kids in the right amount of risk?
Yeah, it's like you can't live life fully without embracing risk. And that's something I want to model to the kids, which necessarily means involving some risk in their lives. Of course, you try to minimize that and try to blanket it in your love and that safety net. But you have to. I think a lot of people live too safely, and for that miss out on a lot of life's true richness. So we're not afraid to. The way I've tried to introduce the children to that would be take them up for a week or two into the wilderness. You know, we pack up the llamas, take them up, spend some time up there. And it's really neat because you'll see, you know, you might be worried that, oh, it's going to be cold or it's going to be tough or buggy. But once the kids are up there, they kind of get used to the setting as is. I want to take them up there long enough that when they say they want to go home, they're speaking of basically the teepee instead of, you know,
that's great.
And it's really neat to just watch them in a, you know, freak storm comes in the mountains, it's raining and hailing, and they're just under a rock playing house or whatever it is they're doing. You know, it's like, but of course that's not without some inherent risk because you're not in a safe bubble wrapped environment. But that's something I think we're okay with. And as parents, you know, when we first had kids, we had that discussion that, you know, we're going to try to live life the best we can, model it the best we can, but we can't predict everything and we can't control everything. And we want the kids, of course, to live healthy, safe lives. But it's also, there is inherent risk, and we aren't going to hold each other to a degree liable for that. You know, like if you turn your back and the kid falls over and hits his head or something, you can't blame, you know, we're going to do our best, but beyond that, we have to hold it with open hands, kind of.
100%. You know, there's you know, the idea when the white people came to America, let's say, right, or it happened here in Hawaii as well, right. They didn't have the immune system, and so it took out so many of the natives who lived here and all over the mainland. And it's a very common tale, right? They didn't have the immune system, they didn't have the diseases, and so I think in a similar way, there's kind of a metaphor there for kids in life, right? If we remove all of their struggle and adversity,
exposure, what creates resilience, and instilling resilience in yourself and your children is one of the most important things you can have, you know.
I actually had that question. I wrote this down earlier. There's 4 terms that you on your website. There's and one of them is resilience. So how do you define? Let's go through all 4 of them real quick. How do you define? I'll hit each one, but let's start with resilience. What does that mean? How do you define it, and how do you build that?
Yeah, resilience. I guess it's the ability to withstand difficult situations and thrive through them, you know, and to some degree. It's the answer to how to build resilience in yourself and the people around you is obviously a long-winded answer, but I think it started with my own observation of my own family history, which was my grandparents lived through the Armenian genocide and watched their whole families massacred. Both my grandma and grandfather were basically the sole survivors in their family as children and were orphaned and all that. What I didn't know my grandparents because they died before I was born, but I knew all my 11 aunts and uncles, and they were just such happy, bright people. And it only struck me later in life that this is only one generation removed from the most terrible circumstance I can imagine. And I thought, how was it that my grandparents that went through so much horror were able to raise children that were like happy, like joyful? What was funny is I didn't even really know who had done what to our family until I looked into it later. It's not like my aunts and uncles or dad were just like, oh, the Turks did this or that. You know, it's not what we focused on. We focused on creating a family and a life for ourselves. And I thought that was very that struck me. I also spent a lot of time reading war memoirs and, you know, various books that put in perspective my own suffering, and just knowing my own family history, what other people have been through. It kind of gave me a foundation for resilience, you know, that could have resilience. So part of resilience is having that perspective that allows you to put your own suffering, you know, within context.
That's good.
That would be one part. Another part of resilience is strong relationships, you know, like understanding that when you're going through something that there's people there for you on the other side. When I went on alone, which we haven't discussed yet, but a lot of people assume that's, you know, mine must have been the hardest thing you've ever been through. That's explain to me that. And it really wasn't hard. I can just honestly say it wasn't hard at all. Like it was, and part of that was because I had gone to Russia prior a lot. I had been away from my family for years at a time and come back and understood that, oh, these people still love me. These relationships are still secure. And we'll catch right back up. And what I've learned in the outside world will not only enrich myself, but those people that I come back to. And so having that perspective on, that I'm on alone, it made it 3 months out in the woods seem fairly,
that's what a great perspective though.
Right. So,
one of the kind of the, I guess you call it like a core tenet of this podcast, like A Better Life, and the tribe that we have and all this stuff is, I say this all the time, is find people in your life who make the impossible look like a Tuesday morning. Right. And this is such an example of that, where it's like, when I think of like survival or just being like resilient, going out and, like self-sufficiency, all that, I just think of how horribly difficult that sounds. And so like the whole idea of the show is let's get around people who can be like, hey, that's easy. So I love that you said that. It just kind of confirms that.
Interesting.
Because if I may never be you, I may never go live in Siberia and go ride reindeer, though that sounds amazing. I can be a little more like you by learning for like where's that mentality come from? So resilience. Awesome. We got ingenuity. Yeah. Second word. What does that mean?
Ingenuity. I mean, I guess that's just the ability to dwell in a creative mind space. And what's interesting about ingenuity is that I don't consider myself a creative person. I score pretty low on creativity on those little tests and stuff. I'm not an artist or a musician, but something struck me, and this struck me particularly while I was on alone, is I kept being confronted with these problems, various problems, and I had to on the fly think of solutions. There's nobody else to rely on. It's either you figure out your problem or you die, in my mind. And so it was a great catalyst for creativity. And it was funny because I started to, whether you're coming up with just a simple string with cans attached as an alarm system, or building a fence to funnel moose in this direction or that direction. It's like all these solutions you're coming up with, trying them out, seeing how they fail, seeing how they succeed, and then iterating on them and continuing forward. And I thought out there like, wow, I feel like a creative person. I could see where the seeds of creativity developed in humanity. And I was like, oh, that's super interesting. So kind of the key, I guess, to allowing yourself to be creative is to, as I've put it before, is kind of dwell on the edge of your aptitude. Like, of course, when you get the invite to go on this show and try to survive with nothing out in the woods, you're like, I don't know how that's going to go. It sounds a little nerve-wracking, but just push yourself just beyond your comfort zone. And the more you do that, the more you're going to have to live in that space that fosters a creative mindset, because you're going to be struck with all these problems that you have to come up with solutions for. And this is the nice thing about wilderness living is those solutions are usually fairly simple, to be honest. It's like, oh, this stick falls on that stick. And, this, whereas, sometimes in the business world, those solutions can be a little more convoluted, but it's,
I wonder how much of that is life and death, though. You know what I mean by like, you have to be creative when you're out there surviving. Right. And in business, it's just way easier to just lay in bed and scroll your phone instead of thinking that idea.
Absolutely. It's you're absolutely right with that. Like it's really easy to just live in, of course, our modern world has provided us with every comfort. Yeah. We're not going to starve to death. Nothing's wrong. It's another reason why that really struck me when I was alone out there, because there's nobody else to rely on. You really, no one else to blame if it doesn't work out well. So you're forced to figure it out. Yeah. and if you can try to understand that there's a lot of inertia against that in the modern world, you can hopefully counteract that to a degree. But
excellent, man. All right. Third one, adaptability.
Adaptability, I guess, I guess we'll relate it to the show. When I got out on the show, had a real clear idea of what I wanted. The whole reason I signed up for the show is I'd watched the early seasons, seen everybody had bears around and their camp. I was like, why aren't they hunting bears? This is crazy. And so I'm going to sign up. I could do that. And then you sign up and had my whole plan, what I was going to do, catch fish, shoot a bear, blah, blah. Got there and there just no bears. And then I was fishing, couldn't catch any fish. And all of a sudden your whole plan has to shift and you have to adapt. But I think a key to that is just not being afraid to fail. It kind of ties into, I think, that ingenuity, but you don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid if it's a screw up, and and then just learn from your mistakes. One moment that stood out to me was if you watched a show. At one point, I'd worked for weeks to try to create an interaction with a moose. That's what I saw. A moose sign. I didn't have bear. I didn't have anything else. So needed to make an interaction with a moose happen, and I had put my shelter down. I'd done all these things to try to make that happen. Spent hours calling them. And then one day I come out and there's a giant moose like 40 yards from you. And I go out there with my bow and took the shot and the arrow goes short. I was like, oh. And then I turned around and I didn't have my arrows because I'd grabbed my camera instead. And I was just like, oh, I'm an idiot. But immediately in that moment, it was interesting because you could get really upset. Yeah. But what I did instead was I noticed, I just immediately took it all in. Like, wow, that was incredible. I feel like I saw a dinosaur, giant moose. What can I learn immediately, and how can I make this happen again? I'm gonna have to. Now I almost felt like now there's more pressure for me to, succeed in interacting with a moose again. And so I watched where he went. Took note of that, followed his tracks, was immediately aware of like, I'm not gonna be like, dang it, I missed. Be quiet. Follow over there, see where he went. And that's when I saw the two, it's probably 300, 400 yard funnel, area in the forest they went through. And I was like, man, I could build a fence here. And immediately start thinking of new solutions to the problem and just adapt to whatever happened. But to do that, I think you need to expect failure and be ready for it when it comes so that it doesn't knock you off your feet, And
that's really good, man. It reminds me of out here in Hawaii, sometimes we'll get on paddle boards and we'll just paddle out in the middle of the ocean, right? And we'll look for the whales. And there's whales here for January, February, March, April. You'll see some this week probably if you look for a while, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to paddle to where the whale is, right? Because we're slow paddling, so you got to paddle to where the whale's going, right? So you pack up early, 6:30 in the morning. You jump in the truck, get out to the water, right? Paddle out for an hour, and the whole time you're looking for the whales, and then you see them out there, and you paddle way in front of them, and the hope is that a whale, somewhere pops up near you, right?
Right.
And so I probably do this 10 times every year, and I would say 8 times out of 10, I'll get within 50 feet of a whale, out of the blue. In fact, Alex and I were out there the other day.
Pretty awesome.
It's the crazy thing. We were out there the other day, and I said the words.
Incredible.
I was like, I just don't think we're gonna see any whales today. And this guy pops up out of nowhere, right? It's crazy. So, but here's where I go with this idea is. Just like the moose, you saw the moose out there, right? But you built the shelter downwind. You were thinking about the funnel, how to funnel. You do all these steps right, and then luck happens, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so everyone's sitting at home on their TV are like, oh wow, he's lucky he got a moose. Right. And you're like, no, I'm not lucky I got a moose.
That's funny because I've been lucky hunting before. I bumbled across something or whatever, but that situation was probably the least lucky. It was so much work weeks of effort went into that, and then you have a situation, and
I would say no. People are like, oh, you must be lucky to have a body like that. The person with a six pack. They're just like, no, I would be shocked. It's like work until that success, work until not success would be a shock. You'd be I'd be shocked if I didn't have a six pack. I don't. But I would be surprised if we didn't see whales out there because I'm out there and I'm constantly shifting direction and I'm looking for them. And
it's a good point. I even when a lot of times people are just getting into. I guess we're talking hunting or whatever. It's a lot of it is just keep putting yourself in those positions and spend enough time out there. Something's bound to happen. It takes that persistence and resilience, especially as you're learning something new. But
Yeah, how many people look at business people and like, oh, they're so lucky to have, bought real estate in that time or in that location. Right. They started that dog walking business right at the right time to buy. I'm like, well, they just kept putting themselves out there.
Kept trying. Exactly. Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah. Mark Cuban has a great quote that says, the great thing about business is you only have to be right once.
Right.
The great thing about hunting is you only got to be right once. You got to get that one moose. So
so don't be too worried about all the times that you get it wrong, but don't just stand still. That was my whole even plan on going on that show is like, I could have looked at it as a disadvantage that I had, similar body styles. So tall, thin, like super high metabolism. I was like, oh man, I'm screwed on a starvation contest, but that forced me into a certain pathway. It's like, there's no way I'm going to win a starving contest, which means I need to be active and make something happen. And it forced me into activity, which ultimately is the only thing, that's the only way you would ever achieve true sustainability in an outdoor situation. You can outstarve people on a TV show, but in a real survival situation, you need to make it happen. And it struck me after I got the moose, like, holy smokes, if I had my family here, it's like, I might get a couple days off, and then it's just right back to it, man. You got to keep producing, and talk about never, the pressure never being off. It's kind of interesting, but
you can't just rest on your laurels.
Exactly.
My buddy has a construction company called Laurelless, and I did being like we don't have laurels. You did, like you just keep going.
There you go.
It's like, good job. Celebrate for maybe a minute and then get back to it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads to the last word then is gratitude. The last word on your website you wrote down, gratitude. What is, like, why is that important to you?
That ties a lot, I guess, into resilience. But I think you're really, as you move forward through life, if you're not grateful for what you have or what you've been given, you're pretty liable to lose what you're not aware. Lose that in the process. So, constantly dwelling in a place of gratitude just helps everything else, from the failures to the successes to just puts everything else in perspective. And I think if you're not grateful for something, you're really liable to lose it. So
that's a social media quote right there.
Say it again. No, but I've definitely thought about that a lot. That anyway, and it goes for all of our, our society, us personally. We just need to really understand what we have, and then you can improve upon your situation. But anyway.
That's great, man. Well, speaking of gratitude, I want to shift and get to our show sponsor this week. But one thing we do on the show is 100% of the ad revenue from every episode goes toward a charity or a cause of the guest's choosing. So is there a cause/charity that breaks your heart, that you care a lot about, that we can throw all the money from the show toward?
There are, and I'll consider which one specifically. Okay. I oftentimes when I'm giving money, I'll give it to some of those Middle Eastern funds that support Assyrians and people that are stayed back in a pretty tough situation. I also have organizations that I like to support up in Idaho, Montana area that kind of involve wildlife management and helping keep those outdoor places rich and life-filled. And so, I'll have to think on that. Let me know which one. I appreciate the the opportunity to support them.
Yeah. So all right. And with that said, let's get into the show a little bit. We've kind of been dancing around the show, but there's a show you mentioned you were watching it, and you were like, I could do that. Which everybody has said watching any show of all time, like, oh, moron, I can throw a football over those mountains, right? So how did you go from I could do that to in the middle of the wilderness? And how'd that go?
And to talk about there's a little bit of luck involved in that, right? No, but my buddy had told me, oh, you should watch this show. It's called Alone. It's pretty interesting. And I think at that time, season 2 was about to come out. So I went and watched the show. And like I said, it was a fascinating idea for a show. They take 10 people and give them each 10 basic items, like a ferro rod and a sleeping bag, some pretty simple stuff. put each person of those 10 people by themselves out in the woods. They self-film, and you have a tap out button, and it's basically the person that lasts the longest wins. And so pretty fascinating idea for a show. And like I said, I watched it, and I enjoyed it. And I also thought, well, why aren't they hunting bears? Of course, there's when you get on the show, you realize there's certain regulations and that certain seasons had to follow and stuff. So that said, as you're watching it, you're exactly like, what an idiot. No, but so I signed up for it on a whim that evening, and then sent off. It was a real basic sign up. I think I sent him a link to my YouTube videos with living with the reindeer herders in Siberia and stuff, and sent it off and forgot about it. And it wasn't until 3 years later they randomly reached out.
Really?
So I was working up on a construction job in DC and building this driveway, and I got a call, and this is the History Channel. Every time I was like, oh gosh, I forgot about that. And I was like, man, they said, just so you know, you're one of the only people, all of us, all the producers agree with one on the show if you say yes. And so I was like, oh, geez, oh man, I got to go catch up on the show. And so, of course, as the doors kept opening, I just kept going through them. And obviously, having lived a life, I think that was interesting for them prior, made for good TV. Been to Siberia, done all this, that, had a little family. So it was good. It fit their mold. Yeah. And then I found myself all of a sudden that helicopter was taking off, and you're like, holy cow, this is happening.
Yeah, where'd they drop you? Where was this?
It was northern Canada. Great Slave Lake is where it was called. So it was in Northwest Territories. Yeah. And it was a really neat location. It was very remote. The whole time I was out there, I never saw a non-production related vehicle or boat or anything like that.
Yeah, so it's not like they're there filming you like Survivor.
No, right. You get your own, you get your GoPros and your camera, and they spend a week on orientation teaching you how to film yourself, and then they drill it in all the time. You should always be filming. If they go, they'll come do a medical check every so often, 10 days or so, and if they take your footage, and if they'll come back at the next medical check and be like, hey, we noticed you weren't filming during this or that. So they really want you to be filming all the time, which you end up doing because you're bored out there. Else are you gonna do? Yeah. so anyway, I found myself out there, and went from there.
Could you imagine that much footage to sift through? Alex here, who's in the room. Yeah, Alex Felice here.
Yeah, what a nightmare.
Just hundreds and hundreds of hours of just
people blabbing on about
it. Yeah, how would you find
spoons?
Oh, wild. Okay, so you get on this show, and I mean, you said earlier it was easy. Did you? I mean, was it like that from day one? Like,
it was. That's a loaded question, because it could have really not been easy.
Sure.
For one, like your success in a wilderness situation is never guaranteed.
Yep.
Or in business, or it's never guaranteed. Like we were talking about a minute ago, you just do everything you can to try to set up where success is more likely. And so I was stressed the whole time. I was like, oh man, if I don't get food today, then tomorrow I'm going to starve, And so they dropped me off on the helicopter, and immediately you're already like, well, if I don't get food by my next meal time, I'm already starving. So the pressure's on immediately. And so the helicopter flew away. I got my bow, and I thought, well, right now it's probably when nature knows that I'm not here, So I'm going to hike around with my bow. And sure enough, saw a rabbit, shot it. And and again, you could say, well, lucky, but of course that requires that you'd been practiced with your bow and didn't miss at your opportunity. And I did. So I was lucky and got a rabbit on day one, and then started to move. I assessed my location and realized that the only thing I could see was there might be moose in here, but I wasn't seeing other sign, no berries, which I was expecting. And so it's like, well, and if I'm going to be hunting moose is my most likely option, I'm going to have to move my shelter to where I'm not in their trail or not near the wind's not blowing the wrong direction. So I was in the process that first day of moving my shelter, and I saw another rabbit run by, and I was like, ooh. So I went and moved my shelter, set some snares there. And the next day I came out and I caught a couple rabbits in those snares. And I was like, well, I wasn't thinking about rabbits, but I guess that's the way to go. So, kind of just adapting to what was on offer there. And really started leaning into those. And then, but rabbits don't sustain you. They're just that it fills your gut, but there's too much protein in them and not enough fat, so your body can't actually process it. So I think I was losing weight as fast as someone that was not eating anything, but I was catching rabbit after rabbit after rabbit. Yeah. But that whole time I was stressed. I was like, oh man, I'm going to starve tomorrow. I'm going to starve tomorrow, you know? And then it was on day 21, I believe, that I finally managed to get a moose, which was an incredible
Yeah, I'd love to know that
day,
story.
and we'll talk about that. But even then, I never felt like the pressure was off. It was almost something I learned in hindsight after the show, which was to live a little more in the present, because I bared a lot of stress of a potential future that never ended up coming to fruition. You know what I mean? I thought, oh, I shot this moose, but somebody else probably got a moose, and the wolverine stole my fat, so now I'm losing again. So now I got to make up for that. And then am I going to be okay missing my family for like up to a year out here? How's this all going to play out? It's, it's a bummer. We're going to have to miss Christmas with the kids and, stuff. Yeah. You start thinking about all these future things. Of course, I shot a moose. I had all this fish. I was still worried about starving because I'm going to eat this at some point. And so I just bore all this stress. And then one day the show ended and I was like, huh? Like, oh, wow, incredible. But in hindsight, it was like, geez, I could have just enjoyed the whole time. Like, I didn't even have to stress, but I won't deny that I wasn't like stressed the whole time, which is interesting. And in hindsight, like if I would have done it again, you know what? You do your best every day. You try to confront your problems as they come, and you don't have to dwell in that worry about the future. You just accept it as much as it helps you to motivate you to take action against it, you know, but
in a very, very horrible, a horrible analogy here, I'm going to use very first world problems. I made a YouTube video recently, or an Instagram post with Alex here about cleaning my pool. All right, so I get all these leaves in the pool and they're covering. I look like such an idiot right now. I'm going to just say the story though.
Sounds nice.
Right, so I'm cleaning the pool, right? And there's like leaves falling in. As I go from one side of the pool to the other, and I'm cleaning it, and I get all the leaves up, and I look back at where I started, and it's full of leaves again, and I'm like getting irritated and stressed that like that I can't clean the pool good enough. And I go back and I clean it again. I'm like, oh, I just want to get all these leaves. And then I just had the realization. I'm like, well, maybe I just need to enjoy the process of cleaning the pool. Like, right? Maybe I just need to not be stressed. Like, what if I just took the problems as they come?
That's actually great. Right? I'm the type of person that like am in a hurry a lot.
Yeah, like I got to accomplish. I got to knock this out. I got to get to the next thing. And in life, I do that all the time. It's like, right? I set some goal, go for it. And then, okay, well, now what's next? Right. I got to have more stress in my life.
Yeah, dwell in the process. Like I sometimes I'll do that when I'm hiking, taking people out, and we're going to get to this lake, and you're like, wait, we're already there. Just so you know, like we're in the woods. It's beautiful. Like, take a breath.
I think that with my kids sometimes, right? I'm just like, I got to remember, it's like my son Wilder is 3.5, and he's struggling with talking, and I'm always like trying to like help him talk, and I'm like, but it's like, he's not going to be 18 and struggling to talk. Like, he's going to figure it out. I can fully try to enjoy this moment with my kid and not feel like
pressure.
The pressure to get him in the schooling system. Like, I don't know if you've dealt with that, but the schooling system, like we homeschool right now. And one of the reasons why is because I just don't want to deal with that like pressure of
he's behind.
He's behind. We have a tutor that once a week, my daughter goes for an hour with this tutor, just for mostly for interaction with another friend. And the tutor mentioned recently, like, well, Rosie's, really good in this, and this, but she's just a little behind on this one area. And it stressed my wife and I out. Like, all of a sudden it was, now we're comparing to other kids, right?
Totally,
I'm like, we better sit down and double up on her math or whatever the thing was.
I guess that's good about homeschooling. You can maybe lean into her strengths as their strengths, and the other things will catch up to you over time. But
and we do it to our kids, but we probably do it to ourselves just as much.
We do.
Right? Like, all these things are great in my life, but I got a little bit of fat on my love handles here. I'm such a loser. Like,
there you go, gratitude, right?
You
have to be thankful for what you have, and then work on what you need to work on.
All right. It reminds me. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, there was a thing you said earlier about you thought there were going to be bears out there. You thought there were going to be berries out there. You thought the fish would maybe come easier. And you get out there, like you have this plan, it doesn't work. And it reminds me of two quotes that I love. Number one is Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Right.
I love that. And then Eisenhower said, plans are worthless, but planning is everything.
Yeah. Right.
So I see that in you, right? Yeah, you still need to have a plan, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't always go that way.
You have a plan, you get it all set up, and sometimes it works. But if in life you've often dwelled on the edge of aptitude, as we talked about earlier, then you actually become more comfortable in that space, so that when the plans don't work, you're less uncomfortable with relying on your ability to adapt or confront these unforeseen circumstances. So, I think.
Yeah, that's good, man.
Leaning into that's okay.
That's good. All right, so you get this moose. Like how do you get a moose with a bow and arrow? Like, I mean,
yeah, it was intense. I was what a blast. I spent a lot of times like sitting on the up in the berries, just picking berries, filling all my pockets, and calling moose. Like they make this sound, and so I just sit there and call moose, and.
Just with your voice.
Did it for days, just with your voice. The nice thing about moose, you don't need anything special. You can just.
You know what it sounds like.
Yeah. Okay. You make this sound, and then as I was out there, I noticed generally I would call, and any interaction I had would pretty much be the next day. Like it actually took them a really long. They'd hear it from miles away and dink their way over slowly, get there the next morning.
I'm sure they were pretty disappointed. Thought you were a female moose. Yeah. you are not.
Most of them were pretty disappointed, I think. I'm not a very attractive moose.
Yep.
But yeah, so I'd done a lot of that. Done, like you said, always situated in my shelter. I'd spent nights trying to stay up go nocturnal, stay up all night and try to get one at night. They're more active then. And then I missed the moose like we discussed earlier. And then I had tracked them, realized there was an area that wasn't very narrow, but it's a pretty flat terrain up there. And there were like two hills, and between them, it wasn't too far of a distance. And I noticed when I missed that moose that it ran through that area, and I saw a bunch of other trails in that area. And I was like, well, I know they go through here, but good luck guessing what trail they're going to come through and being at the right place at the right time. So to increase my odds of getting lucky, I actually thought back to living with the natives, and we had built with the natives, like I talk about how they kind of followed the reindeer, but the reindeer kind of followed them. One of the ways they managed where the reindeer go is they build these giant 30-kilometer circumference fences just with no nails, just interlocking logs, like kind of, and so we just chop and build like for months at a time, these big fences, and they'd push them in there, move them out, kind of manage them like that. And I thought, man, I remember on those fences, they used to build these spots where moose could come into the fence but not come back out. And so I started thinking about funneling fence and moose like that. And I was like, I could actually build a fence between here. But then I thought, oh my gosh, what a calorie expenditure. When I'm on a low-calorie diet, that seems stupid. And then I was like, well, I'm not here to starve. I'm here to either make it happen or not. Like I'm okay with failing. You have to be okay with that. So I was like, well, I'll put the energy into doing it, and I built this whole fence, and you cross your fingers.
Yeah. And that could have gone the other way.
It could have not worked. Could have just built a fence like an idiot out there.
That's funny.
What's a moron doing?
Every great entrepreneur, though, that I can think of, like really big ones, right? The Richard Bransons, the Elon Musks, like the big. Every one of them, their stories, their biographies. They have those examples of, look, this may have gone the other way. So in a way, it's almost like success is just a survivor bias kind of a situation.
Yeah, there is a lot of that, I would imagine. And you might look at a lot of people on that show and be like, what an idiot, just because it didn't actually work.
Yeah, because it didn't work.
But it might have been, they were trying, though. It's good.
It reminds me of the, what's that, I'm not a huge football guy, but years ago there was this, I think it was it the Super Bowl or going into the Super Bowl? I want to butcher this. The Seattle Seahawks. Oh, Russell Wilson, right? Yeah. At the last
Hail
play.
Mary from the 1 yard line.
Yeah, exactly. And it gets like, intercepted, right? And everyone's like, what a moron, what an idiot. But in reality, it was actually the right play. Like mathematically, percentage-wise, it should have worked more than what the alternative was. Anyway.
And,
exactly. I think
when it works.
Annie Duke talks about this, and I think Thinking in Bets, and maybe she's got another book where she talks more about that. But yeah, this idea. Sometimes you just make the best judgment call you can.
Yeah.
And sometimes it goes your way and some doesn't. But over the long run, this goes back to the Mark Cuban quote, right? You only have to be right once.
Yeah,
so if you continually operate in that mindset of what I call, well, a lot of people call, I didn't make this up, but an asymmetric bet, right?
Yeah.
Like where the upside is a lot higher than the downside.
Yeah.
So like, and if you just make those bets in your life over and over, sometimes they don't pan out because they don't always, they're bets.
Right.
But sometimes they do, and you get the moose.
Exactly. And I was out snaring rabbits one day, and I also had set up these tin cans with like string on the moose trails so I could hear them go clank when they walk by. Which almost is why I got that first moose that I missed, as it came through one of my clanks and I heard it and went out. Anyway, so that was one iteration on this. But then I had combined those solutions, a fence and these clanking cans, and I was out snaring rabbits. I actually had a rabbit in the snare, and then I just heard clank. I was like, oh my gosh. And then, like, no kidding. So something's coming along the trail. So I just ran over to the bush that was next to the funnel. And sure enough, the moose comes lumbering up, and I took my shot. It was like 24 yards or something, and it felt really good. I was like, holy smokes, like I think I just nailed that moose. And then and then it took off running. And if you've ever bow hunted, you've also lost animals before. So like you've got one, you think it's really a good shot, and you never find it. And so one of the keys to prevent that is to wait like an hour before you go look for it. And so I just waited like the longest. I skinned that rabbit, like trying to waste time. And then finally I went and, started tracking the moose. I saw some bubbly blood. I probably got it in the lung. It was exciting. And then all of a sudden the blood dried up. The tracks were gone. And you're just like, oh, no way, I'm going to lose this thing. And anyway, long story short, it was the most like emotional up and down day I can even remember. It was just like, I got a moose. Oh, I lost the moose. Oh no, I found the moose. This is crazy. And then, but it's not dead. Oh no. So then I just had to wait. I got close to it, like about 60 yards. But it was still just like moving its head around. It didn't know what happened. It had just gotten shot and went and laid down. And in that situation, they'll usually just bleed out, or if you like spook them, they'll know they're being chased, and they'll like jump up and take off. And by then they've clotted up, and you might never find that animal again, which would be the worst situation. You killed an animal and didn't recover it. So I just waited, and it was a very long 3 hours. And it was like, it would stand up, and you're just like, no, don't run away. And then it would lay down. You're like, yes. And it would stand up and lay down. And it was rough. I couldn't really finish it off without risking like having it run off and it'd be a disaster. So I just had to wait and hope that it would end quickly. And then finally it stood up and shook and fell over. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's dead. Yeah. And I walked up and touched it, and it was dead. And like, talk about the gratitude, and talk about like burden. I had this burden of this like demon on my shoulder. You're going to starve. And it just felt like, oh, finally free of that thing. And full joy there.
Two interesting points on that. One, I think it was President Garfield, I think it was, who shot, right? One of the presidents got shot. Yeah. But what actually killed him was the poking and prodding of the doctors trying to figure out, like, and they say he actually would have lived had they not poked and prodded. So it reminds me of like that example, right? Like you could have ran at the thing and lost it. So there's a certain lesson of patience there to be had.
Yeah, hunting has a lot of those life lessons in it. What was the other one?
What was the other connection there? I don't remember, but it reminds me of that sometimes it's okay to be a little bit more patient. And wait for it to actually. Oh, I know the second connection that I had. I was thinking about a friend of mine recently sold his company. A friend of mine struggled with money his entire life, came from a very poor family, worked hard for 10 years to build up his company, and then sold it for, 8-figure, payday, right? And I called him the day that it happened, and he just started like, sobbing is probably the right word. Just sobbing of like relief. Like, man. Like that weight off the shoulders, right?
Totally.
And we don't always get those examples in life, but it's one of the reasons I love business, like we said about the getting it right once, or real estate, where it's like, one big deal. Like I have a friend he's working on deals, been working on it for 2 years. It's not quite done yet, almost there. But when it's done, he should be making right around $10,000 a month in just passive income. Like
good for him.
Game over, right? I got enough. I'm set for life. And now I can survive. And so it's that moment that I think that drove me for 10 years to build a real estate, or now almost 20 years to build a real estate business. And what it's the idea of like, if I just get this right, I can take that weight off my shoulders.
Yeah. That moment and when you take that weight off is hard to replicate. Like, I was like, I couldn't have bought anything that would have given me that much joy. It's just like, this is an peak experience.
That's good, man. That's so good. What did you do with them? I mean, did they give you a full like knife set to like cut up an animal?
I brought a Leatherman, so it's a little multi-tool.
Like a
little guy.
Yeah.
And skinned up and gutted that moose. It took, several hours to do that. And then you had to pack it back to camp. And then immediately it's like, well, the predators are going to be on their way. So I smoked it so that it wouldn't spoil. And then started hanging it up in trees. And then it's another little bit of an iteration process because you got it hung up in the trees and all the birds are just pecking all the exterior fat off of it. So I tried well, maybe I'll wrap it all in a bunch of branches and then hang it up in the tree. So I tried that, but they would just like climb their way through there. So anyway, you just keep iterating on this problem again. And then also not less resting on my laurels, I thought that like, well, somebody else is probably going to get a moose if I did. So I'm going to try to use this moose to, surely now a bear is going to come in. They're going to smell this thing from far and wide. And so I set it kind of out in front of my shelter where if a bear came, I could potentially shoot it from my shelter. And then no bears ended up coming. but what did come was a little wolverine, and I just it wasn't even in my mind that a wolverine would show up. And so he came a lot quieter than a bear and a lot, little more agile. And he had climbed up on my little shelf, and I had found an old plastic gallon jug and filled it full of fat. And he took that whole jug and took off. And the next morning I came out and I was like, what are all these tracks? And I was like, oh no. And I was like, no way. And I started looking around and didn't initially notice that I had lost much. So no big deal. But then I saw like, oh gosh, that jug's gone. No way. I tried to follow it. Like maybe I'll find this thing, but no, sure enough, I'd lost. I mean, I still had a lot of other fat from the moose, but I was always like comparing myself. So, oh man, if I lost a gallon of fat and another guy got a moose, well, now I'm losing by 90,000 calories again, or whatever that is. And so that was a problem. And then I had to figure out a way to keep this thing protected from the wolverine. And so we had a whole deal going. I'd see that wolverine come in and try to steal stuff. In the meantime, I was trying to build this elevated cache that I could keep my food safe up there. And in that process, one night that wolverine came back and I saw his little eyes behind a bush, and I was like, oh man. Came out. I'd again use cans and heard him clank. So he came running around down the trail. I look out. He's behind a bush, and I drew back on him, but I was like, I'll wait for him to come out from the bush. And I was just waiting, and then like he vanished. And I was like, what the heck happened to him? And it was at night, so I couldn't see. Must have scurried off. And then I was kicking myself for not shooting when I had the chance. Well, the next night, same thing. Clank, clank, coming along. I came out, and this time he was behind the bush. And that time I just sent the arrow. Phew, and it like ricocheted through the alders and stuck him, but it only stuck him in the back leg. But like the back of the arrow was up in the bushes and the front of the arrow was in the dirt there. And it was all tangled up in this bush. And so I could see I hit something. I didn't know at the time what I hit, but I saw him like flipping around in there. I was like, oh man. So I just grabbed my axe and ran over there. And as I got there, he like turned and jumped at me, but he had this arrow in his leg and it like held. But I always have his like little snarly face in my memory. He's like, and then I swung with my axe, and then that first one kind of got him. He was moving around, so it didn't hit him exactly precisely. And then he started spinning around at the injury, and then I just kept swinging, and then it was all over. I was like, whoa, what just happened? And it was funny to like juxtapose that experience with the moose, whereas like every moment of that moose hunt was fully conscious and like I could remember it and recount it, and that wolverine was just like primal. Like poof, something happened. Somehow I ended up axing this wolverine. Like, what just happened? All I have is this one picture memory of like its teeth like jumping at me. And it was a very instinctual moment. But I had killed that wolverine.
Yeah, did you eat it? Is that a thing?
I did. I ate all the organs because there's a lot of vitamins in an animal's organs. And then I had one wolverine drumstick. But to be honest, the moose was better. So I put the wolverine away for a dark day, which never came.
Did you have your camera set up for any of this? Like specifically like the wolverine part? You got it?
The wolverine I got for the most part, but it's at night. So you can only see what you can see. But I actually, to this day, sort of regret, because I really could have, well, whatever, it's a fast situation, but I sort of regret not grabbing the camera and bringing it with me.
Me too.
It would have been, I want to see it, you know?
Exactly. A few things jumping at them.
I don't know if they would have showed it, though, which would have been even more disappointing. Like, come on. But probably not good PR for the show.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. How do you feel about there's kind of an anti-hunting vibe that America has had, right? Like everyone should be civilized and just buy their meat at the store. Like everyone else. Like, how can we kill animals? How do you look at that situation? And what do you think?
What a fascinating topic, because I actually really love animals and respect them. And I think honestly, I think a lot of hunters do. You know, I don't know any group of people that's more in tune to like animal populations outdoor and trying to maintain a healthy balance. The fact is, whether people like it or not, humans are a part of the ecosystem. And in my opinion, I mean, it's great. Life is good. It's a good thing. I'm not an anti-human person, but but in that, you know, there's a lot of us, and it takes a lot of work to maintain a healthy, balanced ecosystem. Part of that, one thing that having lived in Russia, where they don't really manage game populations and people don't obey laws and stuff, it's basically just shoot everything you see, and you see how that's pretty terrible on the environment. And then you come back to America and be like, wow, this is fascinating. We live in town, and there's deer here, you know, and like. And we had all these like, you know, buffalo populations or whatever, elk, all white-tailed deer that were just on the verge of extinction 100 years ago. And we came up with a system that involved human management that brought all those animals back from the verge of extinction to like where you go out in these wilderness areas, and it's like a life-filled forest. And it's such a positive story, and it's awesome, and it's a direct example of something that humans have done a really good job of. And so it's something I really appreciate is America's conservation techniques. And where was I going to go with that? But and you know, of course, as someone who I do care about animals and their welfare. And you look at like factory farms, of course, everybody knows that that's bad. But it's also hard to pay a lot more for meat because everybody's just struggling to get by. So, but I personally try to avoid that as much as I can. I grew up as a little kid. I always loved my chickens and always loved having turkey. You know, I named them all. But I also understand that we're all a part of a cycle of life. And if we can do that respectfully, then, man, we can have... I mean, even when I shot the moose on alone, it sucks for that moose, you know, too bad. But also part of me was happy that it was a bull moose, so that it's not really going to affect populations. Part of me understood that we are in this cycle of life. At this moment, I'm predator, you know, but I'm not going to be around forever either. But it's, again, and go back to the fact that if done well, we can actually manage these wild places in a way where we have almost the best of both worlds. Lots of life and humans who can find a sustainable and healthy way to find food, you know, and I just think I think that's awesome. There's like a lot of, which is also why I think humans need to be a part of the equation. There's a big push now, I know in Washington State and certain other areas to replace human hunters. Like, so over the last 40 years, we've built a large surplus of animals. So people will be like, oh, there's too many elk in Yellowstone, or there's too many like this or that. And so now people want to get rid of that. And so then they want to introduce predators, which is fine. But I just think we also need to manage predator numbers. There's a big push to try to get rid of hunters, deprioritize hunters, and turn all these places back into wild places and the natural wild balance acting, you know, without humans. And that will just take a life-filled woods, which we've like created through careful management, and turn it into a fairly desolate wilderness. And I just so happen to live in one of those where, like there's a lot of predators and you go up in the woods, you can spend a week and not really see anything because it's just everything's kind of been eaten out. And so there's this balance, and I'm all for predators. I'm all for a diverse set of wildlife, but I just think humans managing it I think we can do a good job. It's like a hopeful message. And it's one that we can directly look and see that we have done, but we have to take control of that role we have in that ecosystem, because if we try to abdicate it, then honestly everybody loses. We're going to have a less life-filled forest. We're going to have people that can no longer sustain themselves ethically, so they're going to have to turn to monocrop, ag or factory farm meat, which at the moment I don't have to do either of those things because I can sustain myself in the wild. But if we just throw that surplus of game away by removing ourselves from the equation, I think there's a big loss for everybody. And we all have a general, like, man, I love like wolves and grizzly bears. They're great, but we have this idea that we can't manage those and we can't hunt those. We have to let boost those numbers while we suppress the ungulate numbers. And I just think it's going to lead to a situation that's worse kind of for everybody. Yeah. Where I think, then you have too many wolves and too many predators, and then they starve, and then they're not. Anyway, it's like that natural balance. Like nature's rough, man. And we can actually do a good job of managing. That's really ultimately what sorry, I just went on for a long time.
That's good, man.
But
well, I heard
that's some of the.
I heard I think it was Ted Nugent. Is that the guy's name?
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Yeah,
I heard him talking about hunting once, and it really changed my perspective a lot because he mentioned this phrase. And not that I've ever been like anti-hunting. I just never really cared much. But he said every animal, like no animal dies of old age.
No,
right? Like it's like they die from either what do you say, fang, claw, or starvation. Every animal dies. There's a horrible death.
Right.
So like everyone, like people that are anti-hunting, they're just like, oh, it's so mean to kill these animals. He's like, what do you think happens to them if you don't kill them?
I mean, you can just watch a video of like this. Elk getting the way they get killed in nature is terrible. It's like their legs, Achilles tendons bitten off, and then they're just ripped out while they're alive. It's like, well, that's horrible.
Yeah, so at least what we're doing is a lot more.
So we can be a part of that. Yeah, it's like if you shoot a big mature animal, it's like that's something that no longer for the overall population is that important because there's other bulls that'll find other cows, but honestly the best way for that thing to go. Anyway, I think we can play a really good job in managing it, and I'm all for it. I think,
Did you ever read that book when you were younger, Hatchet from Gary Paulson? Do you remember Hatchet?
No, of course I know. I do remember it, but and I'm trying to remember if my wife recently read it to the kids. But anyway,
jeez, that was one of the best books I read.
Book.
Yeah, Hatchet was a guy or a kid, teenager gets dropped off in the Canadian wilderness and always got a hatchet, and the plane goes down, and that book made such an impact on me as a kid. And then, so at the end of the book, spoiler alert for those who haven't read the book, is he gets out eventually, right? But then Gary Paulson goes and writes a follow-up a years later. I mean, there's another one, I think it was called The River, which is like a sequel. But then he goes back and creates an alternate ending to Hatchet in a book called Brian's Winter. And Brian's Winter was, what if he didn't get rescued? At the end, it was like the fall or the autumn. So he writes, what if he didn't get rescued? What if he had to survive through the winter? And so Brian's Winter was actually my favorite of that kind of series of books. But in there, he ends up, I'm 99% sure it was a moose. He kills a moose in the Canadian wilderness. And that gives him that like, but then he has to figure out what to do with it and like this whole thing. But it's funny because it's a very similar story to what you did.
That's I'll have to read it.
Gary Paulson.
That's cool.
I don't know if that guy's still alive, but if he is, that would be a cool one to get on the podcast.
He's definitely an influential in that world. I hear about that those books all the time.
Yeah, Hatchet was legit. He also had a series of books called the Dunk and Amos books. They were like these little had nothing to do with survivalists, but those were like my favorite book. I read like every one hundreds of times as a kid. I even have a bunch still right now. So I'm gonna read them to my kids. They're just stupid kid books, but man, I loved them. All right, I want to move into something you mentioned briefly when you first showed up today here at my house here at the Sea Shed, and we didn't really dive into it because I was like, I want to definitely get into this in the show. You just mentioned the phrase rites of passage.
Oh yeah.
What does that mean to you? What is a rite of passage? What does that mean to you? And
well, it's interesting that most cultures in the past had some kind of time where a young person took what he had learned in his youth and had this transition to where now he or she was responsible for themselves, and they were now, bestowed that responsibility for their path as they went forward. And they had these, of course, every society had its own rituals and stuff, but nowadays we really don't, like we kind of just bumble through an extended adolescence. It's getting longer and longer, and there's not really a point that we're handed that responsibility and that respect due, that comes with that. And I think nowadays kids are actually faced with a lot of challenges that people in the past weren't faced with. Like I was talking about earlier, the old deal, living those old ways, they're actually kind of simple. And because of that, it's actually pretty conducive to our dopamine and our serotonin. All those things are in line with how our life is, because that's how humans have been forever. And now all kids are faced with a lot of novel issues, and I think we're running a big experiment on those kids, and I think that doesn't seem to be going that well. Like I definitely don't take for granted the advantages we have in the modern world, and living with the Evenki in Siberia, is a lot of me thought, wow, I would definitely choose this way of life if it was my family and friends in the modern context. Because now we have modern medicine and a few of these safety nets that people in the past didn't have. Hypothetically, we could have the best of both worlds if we played it right. But if we leave it to inertia and what we see going on around us, it's like, the young kids, man, they have all these things pulling at them, and it's not really clear. I just feel like the kids don't have a chance against the forces of tech and all that that are trying to fight for their attention. And divided attention is such a disadvantage in life, especially when you're young and need to explore your own thoughts and what you believe about the world and yourself, and you're just stuck on your phone, It's tough.
Yeah, I feel like the only rite of passage nowadays is when a parent hands a kid their first cell phone. It's like, there you go. Welcome to being a miserable grown-up.
Totally.
That's it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So it's like the idea, like you want to, how do we instill a rite of passage for our kids today? How do we turn them into grown-ups and help them avoid that just accidentally stumbling into adulthood?
Well, I guess, how do we do that for our own kids? It's hard to say. I do think, as someone who receives maximum benefit from social media, that's how I run my business. It's how I get the news out there. I really I connect with a lot of people. That said, there's a part of me that thinks it's still a negative, and I think, especially for young people that aren't receiving the benefits of this business and this things like that, it's almost all a negative. I've definitely thought before, for my own just personal satisfaction, if I just deleted it, I'd probably be happier. And so I think for our kids, let's just avoid that as long as possible. I think that also puts the responsibility on the parent to help foster a community that your kid can not be left out of in that situation. Because if they're just going to school and all the other people have phones, and that's how you get invites to get-togethers and this and that, they're going to kind of be isolated and left out. Maybe it's good to actively try to find like-minded parents that also are going to make sure that decision isn't going to leave their kid isolated, and then, but then move forward with that. I have young kids right now. I don't have teenagers, but with the young kids, I do, like I mentioned earlier, like to take them out for extended trips, because I think it, and then specifically I take them out for long trips in the wilderness, because those naturally come with the hardship that comes out with being outside. The bugs might be biting you, or the weather might turn south, or, you have to hike farther than you wanted to. But it also comes with this really cool thing that comes in a world that's stripped of some of those modern embellishments, which is you really connect with people. It's incredible. And this goes for your family, of course, but even for strangers. I run a lot of courses in the woods, and people come out and we spend time in the wilderness. And I've always point out to people, notice how well we're going to get to know each other in the course of the week. We're all just strangers right now. And you spend a week, and you'll get to know people better than you do like if you worked 3 years in an office together.
100%.
It's fascinating. So I think that connection that's fostered in those natural environments with your family is really important. Like that outdoor world gives simple natural lessons, that we're designed for. It doesn't have to be constructed like it does in the modern world. And
dude,
so
that is such a good point that I don't want to leave before harping on this. It's just the idea. I mean, I've never made that connection before, because I know when you go camping with a bunch of buddies, you really like build a relationship. Similar military. Alex here was in the military, right? The relationships you've built, right? Like solid.
There's no better way to bond than over shared stress.
Yeah, right? But how have I never translated that to my kids? Like, where am I putting myself into shared bonded stress with my kids as a way to bond? And I bet you the majority of humans have never had that thought of like, how can I purposely put me and my family into stress together?
You got to put yourself, you have to do it purposefully now, which is weird because nobody wants to put their kids in a stressful situation. But if you go on a camping trip, it comes with everything else. And then,
wild.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was actually thinking also like in the future, I'd like to run like corporate, now everybody works remotely now. And like instead of dragging everyone back into the office, which isn't that effective for building community, like occasional
dude, I'll sign up right now. The whole Better Life. Yeah,
I mean, I think it would be awesome.
We'll come out to is that Montana? Is that where you're at?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll come out. And,
it's like, it's so much better for that team building. I was like, man, I really got to lean into that team building aspect because again, I wouldn't say bumbled, but I kind of just came into this idea to run these courses and do this business as a business opportunity, and as I did it, I saw that it was so necessary for people. And then as I did it, I saw it actually has a particular niche that it's excellent at, and it would be team building.
Yeah, you're right. 100%.
Community building. So leave your leave your guys to be with their family and work remotely, but then just focus on this like concentrated quality time, occasionally.
We're going to put I want to actually we'll talk to you offline here, but I want to talk about, how do we get like the Better Life Tribe? How do we do some events with you? We got corporately wise.
Sweet.
I love
it. I think I got some great options.
All right, man. Well, I'm excited, man. All right. Well, we'll announce that in the future what we're going to do with that. But that sounds great. All right. So that moves me on to kind of the last thing I want to talk about is, let's go into some financial stuff. What do you do for income today? I mean, you and then what did you do with you won some money. What'd you do with it? What did you put it into? And then what do you do today for money?
You're a real estate guy.
I'm a real estate guy. Yes. I love this stuff.
That's funny. Prior to the show, what I did was we had kind of found ourselves, I kind of traveled around the country with my brother, and we rode freight trains and, real simple living for a long time. And then we ended up in this little town where you could get a house for free, basically, if you promised to renovate it. Real dilapidated, rough town. And so we kind of taught ourselves the trade and started renovating houses. And I built up I guess I renovated 7 houses. So that's what I have now. And now I kind of just leave them as rentals. And
that's great.
It was a great way to get started as a young man, and now it provides passive income that kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off, allows me to spend extra time with the family. And when I won the show, it allowed me to actually transition out of that, which I had gotten kind of tired of. And so I went from doing that to, let's try running these survival schools, And so I started inviting people out on these trips in the wilderness. And like I just mentioned, it kind of went pretty quickly from a business idea to something I really see the purpose behind. Yeah. And I think that's important for doing something with passion and that you really love to do. And I just really enjoy seeing it work on people in a positive manner. And it's cool because you had a lot of people come out, but it's like, I know every one of them. If I'll see them, somebody I consider a friend, and likewise, I'll see people that I'm, like from afar, I'll see that person and that person talking to each other who met on the course. And now they're like, there's a bond there. And I just think it's so important in our modern world. And so now I've been really leaning into, providing those experiences with people, trying to construct them, whether it be in the framework be survival skills or the framework be like exploration and hiking and stuff, whatever it be, trying to facilitate that. And that's kind of where I am now. We've been building, actually just recently this year are working on purchasing outfitting rights to this epic spot in the wilderness that I'm super excited.
What is outfitting rights? What's that
So
mean?
in Idaho, which is where I run these out of, I live in Montana, but not on the border. So you have to have outfitting rights to use public land in any profitable way. And so there's these like 90,000 acres that they give a certain entity the right to. And so I was getting
That's cool.
that those public land for profit.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of nice because when you live in such an epic place that I do, your attention's scattered amongst infinite possibilities, and it kind of focuses on us on a particular area that we can really learn, really delve into, and really make the best of and manage. Like we were talking about earlier, like I can take people on some hunts, but I don't have to do 50 hunts. I can do like 3 really good hunts a year. And so I'm excited to have that control in what we're doing. And it's a way I can be creative with how I put these trips together and stuff. So that's now how I have a little bit of passive income from the houses. And then we have this outdoor.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to play with that. How far away is that from Coeur d'Alene?
4 hours.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
4 hours. Yeah. That's cool. You'll love it. You got to come down because I actually live from Sandpoint, Coeur d'Alene area.
That's
and
right there.
When I won the show, I was like, man, I can actually live anywhere I want. And I chose this particular little area that I am now. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I totally see. I bought this house in Coeur d'Alene. I had to do a 1031 exchange. So I had to like I sold those properties, had to dump the money into something else, right? So I buy this big house. It's like 22 bedroom house. 22 bed house. But they're like 9 bedrooms or whatever. But I got a couple bunk rooms. Plenty of space, right? So this is what I want to do is I want to bring in people. We'll stay the night at my house in Coeur d'Alene, then we'll drive down, come hang out with you, go into the woods, and then end the trip back up in Coeur d'Alene at my house. So that's
what
we got to do sometime.
Connect it.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
All right, dude, I love it. All right, well, let's move towards the wrapping up the show. I got a couple questions that we ask every guest every time. First one, what are 3 when I say things, 3 things meaning like actions, habits, beliefs, could be purchases, just could be things in the general sense of the term that you've done in the last 12 months that has given you a better life?
All right, I guess I can start since we were just talking about it. We've typically running these courses, I've had to work through other outfitters who already have the permitting. And so now it's really, it's in the process right now of purchasing this outfit, which will give us so much more freedom to do big little things, everything in between. Yeah. And it's just it's freedom in a way. And so that's great. The other things that we've tried to implement would be, this is something that's constantly in iteration, is trying to be really intentional about my priorities and how I spend my time. So my priorities are definitely my kids while they're little and my family. And so trying to line up what my life looks like with that is really important. And whether that be something that I struck me on alone is I need to take the kids out on intentional dates, like each kid, and make sure they spend time. And that's still something I'm iterating on and very imperfect at. But it's something that I think is good to put out there, that I think everyone take a step back from whatever it is you are doing and think about your priorities, which is easy not to do when you're always distracted. And then focus on those, give those particular attention. So, and my wife recently, this is in the last 12 months, we've been more particular about certain times that we're not going to use the phone, and like certain times that after the kids go to bed, don't like sit there on your phone, like sit there and talk and decompress about the day and go from there. I
probably need to make that rule with my wife where it's just like, let's commit together.
Yeah,
that
we're not going to use the phone. Let's do it an hour. Yeah, after the kids go to bed.
Yeah,
and then you can go check your.
Yeah, because it's really easy. The kids go to bed, and I'm just like, okay, finally now I can go and check all my stuff, and I start scrolling my phone. So, because I'm trying not to be around my kids and my phone, but what about the wife? Yeah,
that's really important. One other interesting thing, I guess, is in the last 12 months, we've been going to church, which is something we intentionally chose to do, even though I've been a little. I'd say I've not gone for a long time and not missed it because I was like, because you go and it's like cliche and you kind of know all the stuff. what was interesting about that practice, I guess, is that that's still the same in my mind. I go and I still find it to be generally boring because although I think that, I mean, faith and your path through life, your journey, whatever that looks like, is so much richness and so much to talk about. It doesn't happen in that context, oddly enough. It's just kind of, you just hear the same old rhythms and cliches. But what I found about that is it is a place where there's a lot of other people that are going that are trying to be intentional about the path that they're on and trying to focus it in a particular trajectory. And so even though the church aspect of it's kind of a practice that I don't enjoy, it's actually led to a lot of really positive relationships with other families that are on a similar path. And then amongst yourselves, you can delve into the richness that's there. And so that's a specific practice that's, proven to provide community in a way that I think the modern world's also lacking, and I feel disappointed to be honest, about the church that they're not, that it is so, it's such a struggle to go. But I think, you can only expect so much of a big institute. But the fact that it somehow brings random people together that are, you can find other people in that group that are interested in living a full life is pretty interesting.
Alex,
cool.
You and I talk a lot about that, how like the decline of religion in America and also the decline of bowling, you could say, like any group activities, is leading to a lot of hopelessness, maybe. So
isolation, loss of community, things that are integral to the human experience.
And so it's interesting how much everybody's experiencing that. So when you go to a place where people are intentionally doing something, even if most of them probably think it's not particularly interesting, but they're doing it for a particular reason, which is to fill that void. It's like all of a sudden you're on a common journey together, and then you can like see where that goes, which is pretty cool. That's been a cool practice.
The only passage actually in the Bible that really, or at least in the New Testament, that really instructs people to go to church and that pastors do all the time, is actually just says, "Let us not give up meeting together." That's what it says, right? It doesn't say, "Let us not give up," like going to church and singing a song. It's meeting together. It's literally saying like, it doesn't have to necessarily be in a church building, though. Like churches make that kind of there's such value, kind of like going to the gym, right? You go to the gym one time, it's boring for me. I don't like it. I don't see progress each time. But over the course of a year of going to the gym, I look back, I'm like, I am a better person than I was before because of the ritual of the gym and how it compounds. So like, we live in a world today where, and I love that you brought up the idea of church. We live in a world where people don't want to do things because it's not entertaining, right? And so then you get churches that are going off the deep end and like, well, let's make it entertaining. Like, I don't know if you've seen those videos on TikTok of the church that do like the full like pageants of like the Avengers, but like try to make it Christian. It's weird stuff. Like, how do we make church fun and it's like, maybe we have to gym.
You know what it has to be? It's like the gym. It has to be a struggle, and that's where all these cliches come to life. Like, we have to have a relationship with God. And that's so cliche. I don't even know what that means. But when you take something seriously, like you take love your enemies seriously, and then all of a sudden you try to implement that in your life, and you realize that's impossible. And then you struggle towards what does that mean and what's that, and you can just throw the baby out with the bathwater and be like, oh, this is all crap, or you can like actually sit there and wrestle with what that means in your life and not throw it out. And then all of a sudden you have like a relationship with God.
It somehow happens.
There's some kind of, and I only see that in struggle, and I think a lot of people give up on the whole thing because it's not a struggle. It's presented to them as a really Avengers version, or like something really shallow and embarrassing, honestly. But but it's a shame because can be a very deep experience, and I'm a real big fan of it as far as like not throwing that baby out with the bathwater, like having this framework that kind of puts you on a particular trajectory that's not up to you to figure out in your 70 years of life. Like we're kind of in this. We have this common goal. We're working towards it, and it's just a path, and it's a path that is interlaced with struggle, and I think focusing on that is where it can come alive. But
that's good, man. I feel like Yeah, it's like going to the gym. They're like, hey, this gym's really good. This is a seeker-friendly gym here. We actually took all the weights. We moved everything down to 5 pounds. We actually serve beer and cookies over here. We're going to get everybody to come to our gym because exactly. This is the gym.
That's called Planet Fitness.
Ouch.
Yeah. And from a business standpoint, it might make a lot of sense. But yeah, they make a lot of money there. But that's really funny. But yeah, sometimes I think you're striking on something really important here, is that there's sometimes this value in the ritual, in the journey, in showing up. And when you look back on it over a long period of time, you're like, oh, I'm a different person than I was. I think there's a lot of beauty in that that we've lost in our modern world today because it's not entertaining to read the ritual. Even like churches that like I'm not a Catholic, but if I go to like a Catholic mass or a Greek Orthodox where they have much more ritual. I always grew up thinking, oh, it's silly. Like, why are people doing it? Now I'm like, I see there's beauty in that ritual. I get that. And I kind of crave that more. And I think a lot of people do crave those deeper ritualistic
I think so too. Yeah.
Good stuff, man. All right. What about 3, I'll say, books or resources that have made the biggest impact on your life?
I guess I would say, well, I can't definitely have to say the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn was such an impactful book for me when I was young. I read it when I was probably 18, 19, 20. You know, it's a lot of books.
I don't even know what this is. Explain this.
Okay, it's in the 70s, 60s, 70s. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who he was in, serving in World War II for the Russians and had written some negative letter about Stalin and was arrested and sent to the gulags, the Russian prison camps. And he had a, kind of a mind of a genius in that he was able to remember all these stories and all this stuff and put it together and compile it. And in the 60s and 70s, he was smuggled this giant, memoir / document out of Russia and released it to the wild world. And it kind of exposed like the Soviet Union for what it was at the time and all the prison camps. And the book can be a little bit like thick and tedious about laws and this and that, but there's so much richness in it. I couldn't believe like how much, how he'd write one story about this incredible family, that had this person torn away from him, that and this and that. And they went through all this, but it's just one paragraph of his book that's 3 volumes and, like 8 separate sections. And it's just chock full of these stories, and then it had a lot of a theme that happiness isn't the ultimate goal to pursue, but purpose kind of is. And he would like see like, there's all these grandmas that are somehow produced by this really corrupt church, Orthodox church, but somehow in this like biggest hellhole on earth, they're like little candles, but they die because it is hell there. And, and everybody's getting the food for themselves. But these little grandmas somehow are lights in this hell. And then because they've chosen something beyond survival. And then he goes into like this interesting juxtaposition in his own mind that he noticed where he was like, you get to prison and you think, I got to survive at all costs. And then at all costs starts to get emphasized in your mind. And then pretty soon you're taken from that guy and taken from that guy. And then you're slowly surviving and turning into an animal at the same time. Where he's like the greatest path is like kind of that reversed and just delving in. There's a chapter it's volume 2, the second part of it. It's called The Ascent, which is kind of the pathway out of that mindset. That was to me just really powerful. Like one of my favorite pieces of literature, I guess, would be that. It's only a little bit in the second half of that second book, and definitely worth a read. And it kind of helped me to like focus my life at that time. Also put into perspective. And this would go into I could mention another book,
please,
called Storm of Steel, which is it was like a World War I German memoir. And I read a lot of these war memoirs at a certain point in my life, and from all sides, Russian, German, U.S., everything I get my hands on, something stood out to me usually about the German experience in the world wars because they lost, I guess. And so it kind of feels a little more nihilistic, a little more like rough. And then you look at your own situation, and it was one of those things that really put my own suffering into perspective. Was there's a whole bunch. There's Storm of Steel, Blood Red Snow, The Forgotten Soldier, and then some books I read about the Armenian genocide, like Martyred Armenia was one of them. It's like just books that are just horrible. And then you can't complain that you're like on some TV show trying to you're hungry or whatever. And I think both those books work together. Of course, I couldn't. I would be dishonest if I didn't say the Bible, because it has like help me formulate what my trajectory and path looks like and moves towards. And so, although I would hardly consider myself like a fundamentalist, but it's a very anyway.
It's made a little bit of an impact.
It's made a huge impact. It's like it was the reason I went to Russia. It was the reason I did everything that I've done that's been difficult and gone through it, because really what it came to is I tried to focus my life on, love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord God with all your heart, whatever that means. All the other crap I couldn't be bothered with. Like anyway. But it's like if you keep it simple like that and then try to implement that in your life, it's pretty, there's a lot there. And but I definitely thought a lot of times in Russia, like, I hate this, like I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I'm isolated. I should be like getting an education, I should be finding a wife, and here I am in some crappy village, I don't even know the language, like all these like things that I felt were very difficult. But I also thought, like, I would see like beauty in, say, that native culture and be like, man, but it feels like 1880s Native America, where they're just on assault from all these fronts. And like, I wonder if I can, it's like a dam with 1,000 holes, but I wonder if I can help plug one or two, or just like be a part of it. And then you find that purpose, and in that you can get through the struggle. And so helping me define that purpose, I guess, is why that would be super impactful.
It's beautiful, man. I love it. Well, that's all I got for you. So why don't we close up? Right. Where can people best connect with you at? Where do you want them to follow you?
I think most people, there's jordanjonas.com, which I have stuff on. You can, go there. I also have Instagrams where most people probably follow me. And so Hobo Jordo.
Hobo Jordo. Yeah. Is that a nickname of yours?
Right. It was from those train riding days when I was like 18. I'd like quit my job, and we went with my brother and rode freight trains around the country.
Yeah, let's talk that for a second. I don't want to leave without, like, you rode freight trains. Like, what is this about? You just climbed up on top?
When my brother was 17 or so, he hitchhiked from Idaho down to Reno to visit a friend, and loved the freedom of it, but hated like being reliant on people to stop and pick you up. So he had met some people at some point that rode freight trains, and he did it. And honestly, he kind of did what I did with the natives. He just like loved it and kept doing it. And for like 8 years, he just lived outside, rode trains around. He'd like show up every once in a while, or, you'd hear about from him every once in a while. At one point during that, he was like, "Hey, Jordan, you should come with me." So I was working at like a salad dressing factory in Sandpoint there, and I just quit that job and went and rode trains with him for a long summer, and went around, had a bunch of. It was my first taste of life that I would only again then taste once I really delved into the wilderness and lived with the Evenkian stuff, where I don't have any schedules, I don't have anything but like what's in front of me, very in the present, and it was very freeing and liberating. It kind of made going back to a 9-to-5 difficult. When I did go back, there was an old man that worked at my salad dressing factory. They're like, "Oh, Hobo Jordo's back." I guess that's where that came from. But that was a whole nother little, adventure. That was, I guess, what I would consider my rite of passage as a young man. It kind of helped me view life from out of the box, out of the traditional pathways.
I love it, man.
Yep.
I love it. Jordan, thank you so much for being a part of this show and what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thanks, man.
See you.
All right.
Boom.